Thanks for joining us on the Week in Review. I'm Paris Schutz. Michael Madigan's former top guy is taken down. Tim Mapes found guilty of lying to a grand jury and obstructing justice, all seemingly to protect his old boss, Mike Madigan. He now faces up to 20 years in jail. Trump becomes Fulton County Jail inmate PO 1135809. Arrested on state charges, he led a racket attempting to overturn a free and fair election.
Our city council members have come together to create a pathway to a progressive form of revenue that can address a critical need.
Mayor Johnson agrees to a proposal to hike the real estate transfer tax on very high-end properties to help the homeless. And in sports, a White Sox double play. First, the team floats leaving Guaranteed Rate Field and Chicago altogether for a new stadium, and then announces a complete house cleaning at the top of the organization. And the Bears get ready for their final preseason tune-up against Buffalo. Now to our Week in Review panel. Joining us are Greg Hines of Crane Chicago Business, Adie Quigg of the Chicago Tribune, Lauren Lapka of WGN Radio 720, and Ray Long, also of the Chicago Tribune. Let's get right into it. Ray Long, the Tim Mapes jury took about 4 hours to convict him, didn't it?
It was an amazing turnaround, Paris. He was charged with perjury. They based that on 7 lies they had that they documented in a grand jury appearance he'd made. The jury checked 7 boxes. They only needed to check 1. They said he was guilty on that. They only needed to check 1 box in the obstruction of justice charge too, and they checked about a dozen more. So they had him, and they didn't listen to any of his excuses.
They were out in time for lunch. Greg Hines, the feds ostensibly were never after him. He was offered immunity in his testimony to the grand jury. All he had to do was not lie about what he knew about Madigan McLean. So the question is, why?
All I can infer, Paris, is that he's loyal, but he's going to pay huge costs for it. I mean, his defense was terrible. He tried the Sergeant Schultz defense. I know nothing.
No relation.
Yeah, it was, and just on his face, it was ridiculous. I mean, he'll have another opportunity now, I suspect. Madigan is coming up for trial soon, and I'm sure the feds would like to have him testify. He's going to come up for sentencing. Maybe he'll flip. I'm sure there's going to be some discussion.
What do you think about that, Adie? He hasn't flipped thus far.
Hasn't flipped thus far. This whole thing is just terribly unpredictable in a bunch of ways. But more than anything, it's been fascinating to watch for like the inside sausage making of the end of Madigan's reign. Like, we never see testimony like this. We never hear clips like this. So I'm ready for surprises at every next stage, especially the Madigan trial itself.
No surprise so far, though. ComEd 4 convicted, Tim Mapes convicted, Lauren Lapka. Does that spell doom for Mike Madigan?
I think he's growing more nervous by the day, and he should. Everything's starting to pile up on him, and I think almost this could be the final straw to where he knows he's not going to have a good year and not a good trial.
Although, knowing Mike Madigan, he doesn't tend to throw in the towel on things like this. Do you think Mapes, knowing what you know about Mapes and Madigan, is there any chance he's going to go to the feds and say, you know what, I do know a couple of things, let's talk about sentencing?
I think that he's going to have to examine how many years he might spend in prison. You know, the maximum on the attempted obstruction charge is 20 years. It's 5 years for perjury, but he won't get those kinds of sentences. But he looks like he's on a train to prison right now, and it is something he's got to consider and talk it over with his family. Whether he flips, who really knows, but he's a guy who stayed loyal, but he's also a guy who was often referred to by others who thought he was the smartest guy in the room. It did not work before the grand jury.
And let's not forget to mention that there were some Me Too folks, some women that had worked for the organization that had come out against him. Vindication for them after the verdict. Yeah,
we heard from Elena Hampton, we heard from Sherry
Garrett,
basically saying this was a relief. This was all of the trouble that we went through exposing this end result kind of made it worth it. And seeing, like I said earlier, how surprising the sausage making was, calls by Mike McLean to kind of punch under the belt and really attack this head on was really shocking to see. And I think the women involved in this case feel vindicated that the things that they were accusing of turned out to be true.
the women in these cases their cases came up in this case. There are all these emails of Madigan and McLean and Mapes freaking out about Elena Hampton, the young staffer that had come forward and accused someone of sexual harassment, accused Madigan of retaliating. She had a lot of courage back then, and it turns out it impacted this whole case.
Oh, absolutely. The truth hurts, and the truth is that by all indications, at least according to the women who were there at the time, this was a terrible place to work. There was harassment, there was bullying, there was mistreatment, and he didn't do anything about it, which put him in a real tough spot politically because the Democratic Party tends to attract the feminist vote. And here's the head of the Democratic Party, the head of the Speaker of the House is mistreating women. Not good. That's why he didn't want it to come out, and it did.
Ray Long, what kind of sentence do you think prosecutors are going to ask for?
I don't know the exact calculations, but they will be asking for as stern a prison time as they can get out of this, unless he cooperates and tries to play ball. But you got to remember, if he flips, the other side of the equation is the first question he's going to have to defend is, weren't you convicted of perjury?
So are you reliable? The legal system would suggest perhaps not. We have to move to someone else, another politician in trouble with the law. Lauren Lapka, Trump booked into Fulton County Jail. A huge production here. He's got a motorcade of SUVs and motorcycles, and he puts out his mugshot. Is he capitalizing on this whole situation?
Absolutely. I wouldn't be surprised if for a whole week he was planning how to pose for that shot, because they've seen how all of this is boosting his morale, his base. Everyone's getting more excited. His poll numbers are going up more and more with these indictments. Of course, they're using this to their advantage. And now you got the mugshot. And we were joking how it's funny he's selling a shirt that says "Never Surrender" with a picture used when he surrendered himself.
Right. He surrendered himself to Fulton County Jail. Are you surprised that his supporters seem to be rallying around this mugshot? It's a point of pride. I mean, we've seen politicians, a.k.a. Rod Blagojevich, take mugshots. Was a different situation.
I'm not surprised in the least. Trump has effectively, much as a lot of people wouldn't like it, turned American politics into a big reality show. And he's good at it. In reality show, it doesn't matter what you say, doesn't matter the truth of what you say, it's all about how you come across. The Republican Party now is the party of grievance. They represent a lot of people who don't like how they've been treated. They want a fight or somebody who's going to go out and smash them in the teeth. And the fact that he's willing to take a bullet for them, they love it.
Speaking of reality show, A.D. Quigg, did any of the other candidates make inroads at their first debate, primary debate in Milwaukee this week?
Inroads against each other, maybe. Inroads against Trump, no. He's got double-digit leads against everyone else in the Republican Party. The debate kind of allowed a couple people to sneak up in terms of prominence, but not really gain very much on Trump. And he was kind of a lingering ghost during the debate. There wasn't a question about him and how the various candidates felt about the indictment until very late in the game. And even then, people kind of gave like wishy-washy wave kind of answers and didn't fully acknowledge this is the...
What are you talking about?
Didn't fully acknowledge that this is like the front runner and the center of the party now. So it was odd to watch, and no, I don't think anyone really gained on him.
And Ray Long, you have a handful of candidates that are taking the tack of criticizing Trump, even criticizing the Republican Party in the case of Nikki Haley. Is there any chance of success going that route?
Well, I think at some point the cult has to shrink, and when people start,
it doesn't.
well, you're probably right, but you would think that at some point the information coming in about Trump's misdeeds, his allegations against him, would somehow pull off more people, and it's going to hurt Trump's overall effort. He can maybe win the primary. He probably will.
I'll tell you what I think might work eventually, and it was Haley's line that he's the most unpopular politician in the country.
Yeah.
Even part of his base, his hardcore base, they want to win. They don't like Joe Biden. If they can be convinced that this guy is a dead bang loser, maybe.
Yeah, and I thought Haley was the best. She probably picked up the most out of the whole thing because she had some not only good lines, but she showed she knows the international politics, she knows the local politics. She can make arguments there, and she was the only woman on stage, and she was making a real good stand for not only women.
Does that appeal to a Republican primary voter or a general voter?
I don't
And she made a lot of points about how during the Trump administration spending went up by $7 trillion, and there are things to criticize about. So we'll see how that goes. We got to get to the White Sox, Greg Hines. You reported this week that Jerry Reinsdorf might want to leave town, might want to look for another stadium when their lease is up in 6 years. Is this a classic negotiating ploy to try and get a good deal to renew that lease over at Guaranteed Rate Field?
It might well be, Paris, at least in part, but I think there's some other stuff going on here. Reinsdorf's 87. His longtime business associate, Rocky Wirtz, just died. The team has been terrible. It can't be fun to be the owner of this team right now. And they've never been very happy at Guaranteed Rate Field. You add all
Which
that
I should remind everybody, the taxpayers paid for every inch of that field and all the renovations.
Yeah,
the hotel tax.
You add all that together, and maybe he's just looking for a new greener grass and a little bit better deal, or maybe he's trying to prop the thing up and sell so he can make more money.
All right, Lauren Lapka is a lifelong, long-suffering White Sox fan.
Yeah.
Given how bad they are right now, when you hear the prospect of them moving to a place like Nashville, you're like, meh, go ahead, or no, please don't.
No, I think you know that White Sox fans are one of the most loyal fan bases out there. It would crush us. As much as we think he needs to sell the team, moving it away is not the answer to me. How would you feel to like root for a team where you have to take a vacation to go watch a ball game? I can't fathom that they go along with that, but Jerry doesn't necessarily care. He's going to care about the money. So we'll see what happens there. I'm also very curious. It's like he awoke from his slumber, right? All of a sudden people are like telling him everything that's going on. Hey, the team is falling apart. This is happening. And now he's like, oh, well, maybe we're going to move the stadium. Maybe we're going to move the team. And then the next day, oh, well, we're getting rid of, everybody because everyone's been saying that for a while. Yeah.
And they did.
And going backwards.
I think people joked maybe they'll bring back Larissa, and they did as a consultant. But what about a new stadium somewhere in the city, like the 78 or something like that?
I think that's a real possibility, Paris. The problem with Guaranteed Rate isn't the stadium itself. After the renovations, it's acceptable. It's not great, it's acceptable. It's the lack of all the creature comforts around it, the bars, the entertainment district, the kind of thing you have at Wrigley. That's where the real money is. That's what really pumps up fans all over the country. Yeah, and they haven't been able to do that down in Bridgeport. Now the local alderman says that unlike her predecessor, she's willing to sit down and talk about it, and we'll see, but it might be easier to just do it someplace else, like the 78.
Ray Long, is there a tie-in here with the Bears' efforts to get a new stadium, maybe some kind of joint legislation?
Well, once they start cooking on things in Springfield, pretty soon you've got a Bears fan and a Cubs fan and a White Sox fan, and maybe they'll throw into some kind of Superdome, but it is.
There's no Madigan to do that anymore.
There is not the Madigan who can hold back the clock and pass.
And there's no Jim Thompson.
Right.
For our viewers that may not remember, 30 years ago, they saved the Sox from going to Tampa Bay because Madigan and Jim Thompson were huge Sox fans, and they gave a deal to Reinsdorf.
They stopped the clock.
Right, they literally stopped the clock and passed legislation. Unlike Pritzker, our current governor, who says that he's not in favor of subsidies to moving teams in states.
It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Meanwhile, Lauren, you mentioned the next day, he decides he's cleaning house at the top, something that fans have wanted for a while. So longtime VP Kenny Williams, who was the architect of that 2005 World Series, he's gone. Or should I say he gone? Rick Hahn, the general manager, he gone. Positive development for the field?
I think we all know this needed to happen. Something has fallen apart here. We had a great 2020 season, great 2020. Yes, I say we, like I'm part of the team, by the way. Great 2021 season. And then it was 500 in 2022, and we fall apart. Now, maybe Rick Hahn and Kenny are not the problem, but they're in charge of figuring out what the problem is and finding solutions. And that's not happening. So someone's gotta. I know this was really difficult for Jerry. We never thought we'd see the day. I think everyone's still a little in shock that it did happen.
He has a reputation for being loyal to a fault.
Very loyal. I think that's why they're pretty sure that Getz is going to get the job.
All right, so because the news reports are that Chris Getz, who was kind of running player development under Rick Hahn, is going to be the new general manager. But as a Sox fan, isn't that just kind of like meet the old boss, same as meet the new boss, same as the old boss?
Yeah, he's been here while the problems are happening. So why do you think that just the slight change of position, slight change of focus is going to be drastically different? It doesn't make sense to me, But I do know from sources on the inside that's most likely going to happen.
Why not even entertain the notion of Theo Epstein, who
Right.
turned around
Oh, yeah.
the two most cursed franchises in sports?
Right. I think he would be a great choice for them, and he might like to come back to Chicago and do it again if he was made the right offer. But, you know, pulling a player from player development when the players on the field are not fully developed is kind of a head scratcher.
And then we should
overall.
mention bringing back Tony La Russa as a consultant.
Right, right. Well, there's a big sigh we can all take over that one. But he is not the guy for modern baseball right now.
It does seem like that. And do you think Jerry Reinsdorf is going to listen to any of that?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because it took so long for him to even make the move of getting rid of Rick and Kenny. Now, I think someone's telling him something needs to change, but is he going to listen and kind of think about how important it is to get some outside eyes in on this organization? Or will he continue to stay loyal, knowing that his years are up? I think he wants to kind of keep family close in his last few years. I mean,
I want to make money.
you would think, yeah.
He's got to want
Well,
to
and
make
it's going to be
money.
interesting to see whether he gives this franchise over to his kids or he just decides
Does
to
he
sell
really
it.
care anymore? I mean, he's
I
got a
feel like-
basketball team.
I would hope
I feel
so for
like-
the sake of his kids, who we know have been buying up shares from
Trying to, yeah.
other shareholders in the team. His kids have been using venture capital to buy other shares. So I think for the sake of his progeny, he should want this team to be doing well.
I agree. But, you know, I've had this conversation with a lot of people. It's not crazy to think that he would get rid of the Sox and strictly focus on the Bulls for, you know, the last few years, that he feels that he can keep doing this. That breaks my heart, even though I'm a Bulls fan too. But, you know, I don't know, this team needs something different. I hope he makes the right decision. Obviously, hindsight is 2020, so we'll see in like a year or two if strictly getting rid of the people on top was the right call.
All right, well, the one thing we know is the food will always be good at the rate, as they call it. Let's move on to its first day of school. AD Quigg, CTU, CPS, they're working in harmony.
Yeah.
They're dealing with the heat wave crisis together.
Everything's great.
What could possibly account for this newfound kumbaya
Well, I
moment?
wonder if it could be the mayor, who used to be a CTU political leader. No, this is like, we've talked about this before. It's unprecedented to have so much harmony at the top. We saw the mayor with Stacey Davis Gates, the president of the union, with CPS CEO Pedro Martinez, all together as part of the Tribune's reporting on the mayor's first 100 days. We saw how often he was meeting with Pedro Martinez and Stacey Davis Gates. That said, the district is going to have a lot of problems welcoming asylum seekers. They've got a fiscal cliff they're facing. Enrollment continues to drop. There's a lot that they have to tackle, including a new contract. So happy days right now, but a lot of challenges. to
And
come.
speaking about the migrant challenge, reports this week, Greg Hines, that some migrant children, were turned away from CPS for not having up-to-date forms.
Yeah, I don't know all the details, Paris, but it looks like a classic bureaucratic whatever. The supposed excuse was they filled out the wrong form. For crying out loud, you got little kids, they got enough problems going on. Give them the right form if they don't have the right form. Don't screw around like this. Is terrible. No excuse, none.
All right, and then Lauren, I mean, this obviously comes as the migrant situation continues to swell. There's still 1,000 or so migrants staying in police stations. Do we know any more now about the mayor's overall plan to get them into permanent housing?
No, isn't that interesting? He continues to dance around that question as well. I mean, this has been an issue for, I mean, even before he's been here, and granted, it's only been 100-something days, but you would think that we'd have more concrete answers about a plan by now. Now we're even seeing migrants going back to police stations where there's still investigations going with COPA based on misconduct allegations that are of sexual nature. Now, we haven't heard an update from COPA since that last press conference, which was a few weeks ago. But they basically said they haven't found anything to think that those were true. So clearly they feel safe enough to allow them to go back. But even officials with OEMC said that they just strictly have nowhere else to put these people, which is just heartbreaking.
And Ray Long, this comes as we have this historic heat wave this week. A lot of migrants sitting outside.
It's crazy. The idea that Brandon Johnson didn't tackle this in his first week and try to find people or dorms or apartments or other areas, maybe even open up McCormick Place or something else to house people who need help. If we're a welcoming city, you've got to walk the walk and not just talk the talk.
Well, I was going to say, though, he keeps the former mayor and the current mayor kept running into pushback in Uptown, in Bronzeville, in Woodlawn. Folks just didn't want these facilities used for that purpose.
Yeah, well, when you're in the big chair, sometimes you got to make tough decisions, and that would be a tough decision if you're going to lose some of your base over where you want to put people. That might be a risk you have to take. You've got to do something to help these people who need help.
And we had him on the show last night, the mayor that is, and he said that there's collaboration now going on with the state, with the county. Does that mean that there are going to be facilities in the suburbs or downstate?
I haven't heard an update on suburban facilities for one, but yes, the mayor has said over and over, we're collaborating with our county officials who are providing health care, with the state who's providing us some funding. But I think maybe we might see some federal pressure begin to build. New York officials in particular have been very hard on the Biden administration, saying you need to do more for these states that are grappling with this. We haven't seen any folks in Illinois go that hard, but as we keep getting dozens and dozens of these migrants and running out of more and more space, resources are needed.
What about the money, the $51 million that passed by City Council? I mean, that has to be running out pretty soon.
It is. It may have already run out, Paris. The truth is that this is not going to stop. The Sun-Times had a really interesting story posing the question of what happens around this time next year when the Democrats are here for their convention and the Republicans who
Want to send a lot of buses.
send a lot of buses. You know, if we're not ready for what we deal with now, how are we going to deal with that? I think there is a point to be made here that the feds and the state both need to step up a little more than they have. The city is going to have trouble handling this all on its own.
All right, A.D. Quigg, you had a great story this week about Lincoln Yards and the 78. They're supposed to get TIFs when they start building and developing, and that's supposed to generate the TIFs, but it turns out they have $140 million between the two of them in TIF money. Why is that?
Transfers, a wonderful thing called transfers. So basically there were expiring TIF districts nearby. TIF districts are like little economic development areas where you collect property taxes specifically for development. There were expiring TIFs, and rather than letting them expire and surplusing money back to taxing districts, they sunk them into these mega development districts. Now,
Right, when those TIF districts expire, they go back to the schools, they go back to the city, they go back to the water reclamation district. In this case, they're going to this
tens of
TIF.
millions of dollars could have gone back to the city and CPS, and as we know, CPS has been in a lot of budget trouble recently.
So we have a very progressive city council, a very progressive mayor. How did they let that happen?
Well, these are bureaucratic decisions for the most part. That's the thing about TIFs. When they get set up, for the most part, they're run out of the mayor's office and kind of continue chugging along without a lot of oversight. And we haven't heard the mayor's thoughts extensively on Lincoln Yards, which I'd like Greg to talk about if he can, or TIFs in general.
Lincoln Yards.
What she's referring to is we talked to the mayor like you did this week. When we asked him about, well, having all this money go into these districts, are you going to spend it there? And he left the question quite open. He says, well, we're going to collaborate, we're going to consult, we're going to...
But by the way, they can't get any other financing.
We can spend it there, they could still surplus it. He didn't say.
They can't get any other financing beyond the TIF, so when are we going to see development there, financing, movement?
You know, that depends on the state of the office market, frankly, and the development market. Downtown is still at the highest vacancy rate since the Great Depression. I don't know why anybody would want to invest in some of these big mega developments right now.
By the way, that brings up the fact that the mayor has come to this agreement on a real estate transfer tax, a graduated transfer tax. So he'd raise it for properties over $1 million. Is that going to hurt development even more?
Oh, absolutely. This has been falsely sold as a mansion tax. It's not a tax just on residentials. It's on all real estate transactions of any kind. And the way they've now calibrated this now is almost all home sales are going to be exempt. What this is going to hit is primarily big commercial properties like downtown that are having all kinds of problems now. A lot of them are going belly up. They're turning over they're forfeiting their interest to the bank. And what's going to happen now? You're going to put another big tax on top of them. It's really questionable economically.
Not a done deal, though, AD, because per state law, it's going to have to go to referendum, so the voters are going to have to decide.
Yeah, it's going to have to go through council and then to referendum and then back to council. So there's a long time until this would be fully baked and complete. That leaves a lot of lobbying time, and it also leaves a lot of time for them not to be collecting these additional taxes to pay for what they wanted to pay for, which is service for the homeless.
All right, before we go, Lauren Lampka, we should talk about the Bears. Their final preseason game is tomorrow. They're going to play their starters. I always kind of am on pins and needles.
Yep.
Please don't get hurt. Please don't get hurt.
Which
Is it a
we've
good
already
idea?
seen plenty of, so you have reason to worry. I think it's okay about a quarter. would not go beyond that, especially, like I said, with these injuries already piling up. The last thing you want is, again, no protection for your quarterback. We saw that a lot with Fields last year, scrambling. Just no line to protect him.
Right, they have a lot of injuries on the offensive line
Yes.
right now.
So, just be careful with it. A quarter's fine. It's not worth more than that, and keep everybody else healthy. The good thing is, it looks like most of our starters that are dealing with some injuries are going to be ready for Green Bay.
For opening day.
Yeah, we'll
just
see.
got to get everybody healthy and keep Justin Fields healthy. Don't run.
Right.
Don't run when the pocket breaks down. Ray Long, very quickly, the Cubs going to catch the Brewers.
Well, I think they've got a great chance, and they might as well take them on. They're going to take them head on here with Brewers in 3 games coming up soon. So they've got a good schedule. It favors them. We'll see if they can do it, but there's a lot of hope in the air.
All right. Well, that's
Wow,
something
good
we hear a
baseball
lot.
must be nice.
Yeah. All right. We're out of time, so our thanks to A.D. Quigg and Greg Hines, Lauren Lapka, and Ray Long. And that is our show for this Friday night. Don't forget you can get Chicago Tonight and the Weekend Review streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news. Now for the Weekend Review, I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe. See you at 10 for Chicago Tonight Black Voices. Did anyone see this story about Rahm Emanuel? He's gonna eat the fish around the Fukushima power plant because the
What?
waters have been cleaned up.
He's bending over backwards to be a diplomat for a change, not like Ron.
What?
You didn't read this one?
No.
Yeah, it's a gesture.
He's
of the
not
Japanese
sending a
government.
dead fish to someone. He's going to eat
He's
one.
going to eat a live one.
Like
live
drinking
one.
the Flint water kind of thing.
Kind of.
Apparently, the Japanese really like him.
Yeah. Oh, no. I think the reviews are resounding because he's a train guy. And
They
he's
have
like,
good public transit.
they have good public transit. He rides the train all the time like he did here, which is something Brandon Johnson.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a personal injury law firm pleased to give back to the community through numerous charitable initiatives.